welcome back to a very special edition of the War Room Mock Draft. I lied. I said we were done, but we're not done. This is the final edition because I really just was so excited at the prospect of having the great Paul Finebaum on our show to help me do the first half of the mock draft. Jordan Reid is going to be joining us for the second half. Paul, thank you so much for doing this, bud.
Mina, I'm delighted. I think you may have been better just pulling the first bum on the streets of Chicago that you ran into, but I will try to do my best to act like I know something about this conversation.
I think you know quite a bit, and I think you're a perfect fit for what we do here, which is to remind folks, we go through the picks. I choose two players for every team, and then my guest just chooses one and tells me what they like about them. And obviously, very few people know more about college football than you. You know these guys extremely well. So I'm excited to hear what you think about them because we haven't discussed any of this beforehand. We're both going into a blind. I have no idea what your preferences are. So we're going to start, of course, with Chicago, as you mentioned, and I'm going to put up two quarterbacks. And Paul, just for background, my guests have gone in a bunch of different directions. Most have gone with the consensus, who is, of course, Caleb Williams, most likely to go. Seems pretty written in stone, but I am giving you the option as a guest. And remember, this is what you would do, not what you think the NFL would do. You're not trying to play prediction. I'm also giving you Jaden Daniels out of LSU. Who would you like to take?
Yeah, appreciate it. Mina, because I work primarily in the SEC, there's this feeling that I would automatically pick the SEC guy no matter whether it was Jaden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes, but I'm not going to.
Love it.
I have seen Jaden Daniels play, and you don't need me to add the platitudes for him. He won the Heisman Trophy last year, but I think Caleb Williams is a generational player, and I'm not really sure Jaden Daniels is. I think he's a good player. But after all the trouble that Chicago went through to get this pick, I wouldn't waste it on Jaden Daniels. And I say that because I live in Charlotte, so I'm well aware of how this pick came around. Every time I put on my TV on a Sunday and see someone I really love just get massacred, and that's Bryce Young, this is a no-brainer for me. I'm all over Caleb Williams, and I don't plan on going to Baton Rouge anytime soon after this interview.
Well, you get another shot. Actually, probably two more shots at LSU players in the top half of the draft. But you mentioned you live in Charlotte, and I am actually dying to hear your thoughts on the next pick then, because I believe this is the true, real decision in this draft, because everyone thinks Caleb's going first. I think that's pretty much a done deal. But Washington at pick 2 is really in an interesting spot. I'm leaving Jaden Daniels up, and I'm adding Drake May. I mentioned you're in Charlotte. Paul, it's been a really interesting draft season for Drake May. I've expressed on my podcast, I've been somewhat puzzled by him falling in certain people's estimation, but you never know what to believe. Would you take Drake May or would you take Jaden Daniels here?
Here's where I go SEC. I don't like Drake May. I really do not. I remember when he committed initially. He's from Charlotte. His brother was a great player at UNC in basketball. He committed initially to Alabama, and then he saw the traffic that was building there with Bryce Young and others, and he decided to go to North Carolina. And I think he peaked out somewhere between his sophomore and junior year. And I don't want to. I think was it Merrill Hodge the other day who had the comment about he's going to get somebody fired or somebody. I agree. I watched him in several games this year, and he was abysmal. And it wasn't, he didn't have a great elite team around him, but he had, in my estimation, and I'm not a draft person, I'm just a fan, he regressed. But it just feels like Washington will take him, though, because it's such a loser franchise over the years. But maybe without Danny Snyder, they will get better. But I'm all over Jaden for that one. I may not have been as high for him on the first pick, but I think you have to take Jaden Daniels in this slot.
Well, that's going to cause me to pivot at pick 3, because now that I know your feelings about Drake May, I was going to do Drake May versus the trade for a haul for New England, but I'm actually going to throw a curveball for you. And so everybody who follows the draft closely knows that the Minnesota Vikings have made no secret about their desire to go up and get a quarterback. So they are going to offer you the trade. I've offered a lot of people this trade. They have picks 11 and 23. You'll get a future first, it's a haul, right, Paul? It's a haul. Instead of Drake May, I'm offering you the opportunity to stick and take Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 3 for the New England Patriots.
I really like him. I think on one level, he might be the most talented player in the entire draft. I watched him for many years, as everyone did, and he just does things that normal talented athletes don't do. So I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm glad you didn't give me one more opportunity to bury Drake May, just in the event that I run into his family at the supermarket next Sunday.
Amazing. Okay, wow. So Arizona is next, and they are shook because they thought for sure Drake May would be off the board, but he is still available to them, which means that the Minnesota Vikings are once again on the phone offering them a pick. So you're Arizona. Paul, just to give you a little bit of background, this team is not good. You have a lot of holes, a lot of needs for all of these draft picks. But one of those needs is wide receiver. So Harrison Jr. is off the board. I'm giving you Malik Neighbors as an option here. But then you have the option to trade down and get the haul from Minnesota, who would then move up to take Drake May.
Yeah, no, I'd like to get Drake May off the board so I can quit torpedoing him. But I'm going with Neighbors. I do have a little local knowledge on him. He helped Jaden Daniels win the Heisman Trophy. He's a sensational receiver. I'm casting my lot there, and you're going to have to keep trading down to get me to take Drake Mays.
Can I ask you, do you have Harrison Jr. over Neighbors?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I think that's a tough call, but I think both played with elite wide receivers. Probably nobody played with more than Marvin Harrison, but there's just something about him. It's an it factor. I've seen both of them standing on the sidelines, and Marvin Harrison just looks like the guy that you just say, I don't care what I have to do. He has to be on my team.
So the trade is still on the table from the Minnesota Vikings because they are desperate to move up and get Drake May, but Jim Harbaugh, new regime, no secret. They want to run the ball. A lot of people want them to take a receiver, but 2 guys are off the board, as we discussed. So I am putting up Joe Alt out of Notre Dame to be their starting right tackle because they have a left tackle, Rashawn Slater. Would you take Alt or would you take the trade?
The trade's tempting, but I'm going with Alt. Fight on, Notre Dame. It's a bizarre one, but I'm trying to think like he would be thinking, and that's how I think he'll do it.
I think you're correct in your attempt there.
I'm totally confused on all the trades and where we're going, but I'm going to keep.
So you haven't taken any. You haven't taken any. Okay, well,
I feel like I'm taking the ACT again back in 12th grade. I'm completely lost.
You're rejecting all the trades, which is really quite funny because what the result is you are creating a draft that is widely different from every other one I've done, which is fun. So the Giants, there's no trade because the Giants are like, oh my God, we would love to replace Daniel Jones. And now we have our choice. I am putting Drake May back on the board for the New York Giants, and I am putting him up against J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan, who I'm sure you're aware has been a fast riser up people's boards lately. What would you do?
Okay. Having said what I've had to say, I am now going to eat a modicum of crow and say, here's where I would take Drake May. I am not sold on McCarthy. I stood there and watched him in the Rose Bowl do his thing, but I just think that he was elevated, Mina, by a generational team around him, an incredible offensive line. He's a good player, but I don't think he's cut out to play in the Big Apple.
Okay, so Paul, the Tennessee Titans very much need to help their offensive line for Will Levis. It is the biggest need on this team. They did sign Calvin Ridley. They drafted Treylon Burks. You have DeAndre Hopkins. So they really don't need Rome Odunze, but I am going to offer him to you. They need a starting left tackle. So I'm putting up Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Would you take the player you need or perhaps the better player?
I'm taking Fashanu. Titans have made a collection of fatal mistakes recently, but I think they should follow me on that one.
Okay, so the Atlanta Falcons are picking at 8, and as I'm sure you're aware, the Falcons have they've been picking at 8 a lot, and they have drafted 3 skill players in the last 3 drafts, going Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. They really shouldn't take another skill player. However, Rome Odunze is still on the board. So it is very appealing. They just signed Kirk Cousins to a big deal. There's this, but what if we just went bombs away and just focused all in on offense? That said, the Falcons' pass rush has been absolutely abysmal for quite some time. And the first pass rusher I am putting on the board is Dallas Turner out of Alabama. I don't know how you regard him as a prospect. You kind of reacted in it for the YouTube audience in a funny way when I said his name. So I'm curious to hear what you would do.
I like him a lot, by the way. That's why I reacted that
Okay.
way. I'm just glad to see him show up here. I'm inclined to say that the Falcons will do what they've always done, and that's make poor and idiotic choices. Um, but I don't think they can turn down Dallas Turner. So I'm going. This is a group that said we don't want Bill Belichick as our head coach. So I'm always suspicious of that because I would have taken Belichick. So the same people making this decision could always be wrong, but I think they'll use their past history as an indicator to be smart versus trendy.
Is Turner your top edge rusher in the draft?
Yeah, I really like him. He made he made a really good defense at times look elite, and he didn't have the fortune of playing with some of the best Alabama defenses, but he was good enough.
And one last question: how would you say he compares to Anderson Jr. in your estimation?
A notch below. Anderson Jr. to me was in a class of his own, and I think he proved that this year.
Okay, Paul. Chicago Bears are up next. I am, yes, up again. Yeah, again. So I am going to offer you another trade. I want you to consider it. Odunze is back on the board. They signed Keenan Allen, but he's older. In Odunze, you would have the opportunity to give Caleb Williams, true wide receiver one, to grow alongside for years. However, Buffalo is on the phone, and they will give you pick 28, which, yes, that's a fall, but also a future first, which is quite a nice draft return to move down in the first round, especially since it's not involving a quarterback. You do have needs. Would you take the trade or would you take Odunze?
Give me the trade. I like it.
Okay. Oh, the Bills. Odunze to the Bills would be so fun. Okay, so the Jets are miserable at 10. We're cruising through, by the way, because the Jets really wanted Aaron Rodgers in particular. GM Aaron Rodgers wanted Rome Odunze. So I'm going to put up a player here, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Because there's a lot of debate over where Brock Bowers should go. He's a tight end. There's questions about draft value. A lot of tight ends taken in the first round aren't immediately productive. And the Jets do have two new offensive tackles, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses. But Paul, Tyron Smith has not played a full season since 2000, in 9 years, getting up in the years. And offensive line is such a need. That said, Bowers is a really, really special player. He could help Aaron Rodgers immediately. What would you like to do?
Well, the idea of helping Aaron Rodgers doesn't comport well with my disposition. I'd rather see him sacked 15 times a game. But I'm adding here to try to be objective. Brock Bowers to me is one of the most underrated players I've ever seen. I would automatically take Brock Bowers. He is so good. He's hard to quantify, to explain. And I think that's one reason why he is where he currently sits in the draft. But him being banged up last year cost Georgia a national championship. He's that valuable. He makes. I try not to sound like sixth grade English here, but he makes every team better dramatically, and I think he would make the Jets a serious contender.
All right. So you may remember
that is if they can get Aaron Rodgers interested in playing quarterback again and all the other off the field stuff.
Well, I think Brock Bowers would catch quite a few passes in that.
I'd also rather see Brock Bowers as a vice presidential choice running with RFK Jr.
Yeah. Well, he
probably not old enough though.
He's very complete, and he is a mismatch. So could see that working out. So you left JJ McCarthy on the board. The Vikings desperately tried to trade up for Drake May, but you rebuffed their advances and the Giants took him. So the Vikings had to stand pat at 11. So I am offering you JJ McCarthy at 11, or just going in a wildly different direction. I'm going to put my first cornerback on the board, Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. He is my corner one in this draft. Corner is definitely a need for the Minnesota Vikings.
No way. Since I'm talking to Terrion later in the week, I don't want him to see this and find out that I chose J.J. McCarthy over him. I love Terrion Arnold. I think he was a sensational player. One reason why Alabama had such an amazing backfield on the defensive side. So I've ticked off the Drake May family. Now I'm working heavily on J.J. McCarthy's family. So, J.J., you can just sit for a while as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm going to keep offering him to you. I'm actually going to throw up another player because I'm curious to hear your thoughts now on this matchup. So the Broncos, similarly to the Vikings, need a quarterback. I'm throwing up Penix Jr. It's very rich in my estimation, but this is Sean Payton is desperate for a quarterback in this scenario. Which of these two players would you rather have?
This is where the guest usually says, Mina, it's just so hard to choose. But I'm going with J.J. McCarthy there. I don't think Penix is a first round pick. So I mean, he's not far from it, but I wouldn't go that high with him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think JJ's going to go a lot earlier than you wanted. By the way,
I did all I could to keep him down.
You know what? This is a funny draft because most of our drafts at this point have been very offensive line heavy, and when I've gotten to the Raiders, they really haven't had their choice of that many offensive linemen because that is a need for them. However, there's some really good offensive linemen on the board, and so I'm going to put up two of them. We only have a few more picks for you, by the way. You're doing great. For the Las Vegas Raiders, Troy Fautanu out of UW, who is very coveted for his versatility, could play tackle, could kick into guard, or Talisa Fuanga out of Oregon State, more of a right tackle, kind of like a mauling, nasty run blocker. Do you have a preference?
I'll go with Fianga to bottom there, just
Yeah.
for no good reason at all.
I think that he actually might go before him, so you might be right. Actually, the Saints are devastated in this scenario. Although, actually, I'm going to make this one interesting. So the Saints desperately do need a tackle. So I'm leaving up Fautanu, but I'm putting up a pass rusher because they also need a pass rusher. And this pass rusher is very Saintsy. They like big power rushers, and I'm giving you Jared Verse out of FSU for the first time on our board. Which one would you take?
I'm going FSU here. I saw him a lot this year, and he was elite, and I think he fits in better with what they're doing down there.
How do you like Turner better?
Yes, but I think they're pretty comparable.
Okay, so I think you're gonna have an interesting choice from these two players. So the Colts need a wide receiver or a corner, and you have two very interesting options. As we have established, 3 wide receivers are off the board. Brock Bowers is off the board, but Brian Thomas Jr. is still on the board. Big, long speed, something that the Colts could really use, a deep threat for Anthony Richardson. I am adding a corner, Quinion Mitchell, who some people have out of Toledo, over Terrion Arnold. I do not, but some people do. Very athletic, crushed at the combine, super physical, good ball skills. Which of these players would you rather have for Indianapolis?
I don't know enough about the bottom of that, but I do know Thomas Jr., and I'm going with him. So I feel more comfortable with what I know than depending on people who claim to know.
What do you like about him?
I just think versatility. I just think it's a good fit for him.
Okay, final pick. You ready?
I got a feeling you're really going to give me a trick question here.
No. I'm going to give you two really, really good players. It's the Seattle Seahawks. And, actually, if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm absolutely thrilled, by the way, because interior of the offensive line is a massive need, and Fautanu is still on the board, gets to stay home in Washington. I'm going to add a player we haven't seen, and that's Laiatu Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA. Super polished, love his game. Some questions, obviously, the injury history. He was a Husky, right? As you know, which of these two ex-Huskies are you taking?
I'll tell you. I just have a better feeling for him. I know I'm going a little bit against the grain there, but I saw a little bit of him this year, and I just this is where you're sitting in the war room and you're literally making a gut call. It may not exactly fit, but that's my inclination.
I mean, I feel like the injury history is a concern, but he's just so dang polished as a pass rusher.
I like that.
Some of those games he took over. All right, Paul.
Hope I haven't let you down as a Seahawk fan.
No, I love him. Might take Fautanu if he was there, but I love Latu. He is an amazing player. Paul, this is great. You went through the entire first half of the first round. Do you have a favorite pick?
Continuing to trash Drake May. That's been my favorite so far. I probably, I really like Bowers because I just think he gets forgotten about. And I was exposed to him a lot, and I understand it's an unusual position, but I just don't think that I don't think that position he can do so many things is why I like him.
He's more of an offensive weapon.
Yeah, I think
tight end. I think he has.
But more than anything, I'm just glad we made it to the end because I can't tell you how nervous I've been and sweating this out, knowing that I'm going to bomb my first draft with Mina.
No, you crushed it.
Never be able to live it down.
You crushed it. I think you set up Jordan Reid, who's up next with some interesting choices. So thank you so much, Paul.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we are back for the second half of the first round. Jumping in now for these picks. My friend, you can catch him on all of ESPN's draft coverage. Jordan Reid, are you ready to do this?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so where Paul left off. First, you saw Paul's picks. What did you think of the first half of the first round?
It definitely threw me for a loop. I will say that. But you can always count on Paul to do that. That's why I love everything about Paul. But it was fun. It was fun to see him go through the picks. And it definitely was unconventional. And if it does turn out like that on draft night, it will be very interesting for everyone.
Very interesting indeed. He did leave you a lot of good players. I have you picking for the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick 17. And I'm going to put up one name that I think has been associated a lot with the Jags and one maybe that hasn't, but I would like to hear your thoughts. So you're choosing for the Jags between Quinyon Mitchell, who is the cornerback out of Toledo. Terrion Arnold was taken earlier. And then I'm throwing up another Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell. The Jags do need a receiver. His ceiling, if it hits, might give them the type of receiver they need. What would you do if you're Trent Baalke?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I can actually see them going in either direction, but I'm going to go with Quinyon Mitchell just because they have to get a corner opposite of Tyson Campbell. They let Darius Williams go this offseason, bringing in a new system with Ryan Nielsen, who's expected to be more of a press man type of defensive coordinator. So they're going to be playing a lot more man coverage this year. And that's exactly what Quinyon Mitchell does. Now, he plays a lot of off-man coverage at Toledo, but you're going to have to teach him more so to play more aggressive in press man. You're going to have to basically teach him a lot of the intricacies of the technique as well. But his ceiling is so immense, Mina. Like at the Senior Bowl, I thought he was the best player regardless of position. And there's just so much upside with Quinyon Mitchell. So placing him opposite of Tyson Campbell, that gives you a really nice duo to build around for the future.
I love your point about the defensive change in Jacksonville, and I think they would be thrilled to get either him or Arnold at pick 17. All right, so 18 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Just as a reminder, Brock Bowers was taken earlier in the draft. Popular choice for them. If not Bowers and not with the top receivers who I don't anticipate being there, I think that they're likely to draft along the defensive or offensive line. And I think you have some really nice choices because Byron Murphy Jr. out of Texas is available. But so is Troy Fautanu. Maybe that's surprising that he's still there. Can play a number of positions. Which would you take?
I would go with Byron Murphy the second here, just because they need a wrecking ball in the middle. When DJ Reader got hurt last year, their run defense really went downhill, and they don't really have that guy in the middle. They've tried to patchwork it this offseason. Sheldon Rankins is a good player, but when we're talking about Byron Murphy the second, I think that's somebody that can be an upper echelon type of talent in the NFL. We've seen all these defensive tackles get paid, and most of those guys are or have been first round picks in the past. And getting that type of player in the middle, I think it definitely changes things for Cincinnati on defense.
All right. So the Los Angeles Rams are at 19. I have been going defense with them. And I think a lot of people expect them to go defensive line. And there is a defensive lineman left that I really love. However, this is Sean McVay's first round pick. And I think it'll be hard to keep him from going offense. This, to me, might be a little bit surprising, but because you might not project it as a need, but I think it quietly is for the Rams, and that's offensive tackle. So we're putting up J.C. Latham out of Alabama, but the defensive player I alluded to is Johnny Jerzon Newton, Illinois, player I love. Which of these two players would you take?
This is tough for me, but I actually would go with Johnny Newton here, just because. I mean, it's impossible to replace Aaron Donald. You're not going to do that just because of how terrific he was. But I just feel like Jerzon Newton's been really underrated throughout the process, and it's only because we haven't seen him. Just because he had the surgery in January for the Jones fracture in his foot. But outside of that, we haven't seen him. And he had his personal pro day on April 16th. But in the public eye, we have not seen Jerzon Newton since the season finale. But it does not take long to notice him on tape. And what I love about him the most is that he played 715 defensive snaps last year, which was seventh most in the FBS last year. So there is not a game that he doesn't stand out. I just go back to that Wisconsin game of where he absolutely took over from start to finish. So I think he can be that type of player on the next level. So I just would love him. Putting him beside Kobe Turner, who was a really good player for them last year during his rookie season, I think it's a really good fit.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are on the board at 20. A few different directions that they could go in. Mitchell is tempting. They really do need a receiver. But I think the caliber of offensive linemen still available in our draft make it too hard for them not to address that position, which is also a need. Doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, whether it's Fields or Russell Wilson. They do need to improve there. Fautanu is still available, but so is Latham. So I'm giving your choice of these two players, very different players.
Yeah, very different. But when I think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think of tough, physical, just absolutely want to maul people. So I think J.C. Latham fits their type of what they want a little bit more. And then also that allows you to slide Broderick Jones back over to his natural spot at left tackle. I think they want to upgrade from Dan Moore. So I think J.C. Latham stylistically or schematically is a better fit for what they want to do as far as the downhill running game. So pairing him with Broderick Jones, I think that gives them a really nice 1-2 punch.
Okay. If you're the Miami Dolphins at 21, how excited are you that Troy Fautanu out of Utah is
I was
still
hoping
there?
you wrote down another name just for the heck of it.
Okay, well, let me pivot then.
No.
Is it Amarius Smith? Okay, then I'm not going to keep guessing. So, it's Fautanu. Who could it possibly be?
I just want to see him take Xavier Worthy just for the fun of it.
Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do the sensible thing. Yeah, I know, right? Maybe we'll try at the end. Maybe we'll do a trade up or some chaos, but we're going to do the sensible thing and go offensive line here. I'm not picking for you, but
I
on.
know.
Come on.
I know. I mean, Fatanu's the easy choice here, in my opinion, just because they need a guy that's versatile. They lost multiple pieces along the interior, and then Terran Armstead, he's always back and forth on if he's going to come back the following season. He already said he's coming back this year. So I think Fatanu would be the better fit for them just because he has versatility. Mims is only a tackle only, in my opinion. I don't think he has any versatility as far as sliding in the inside. But Fatanu, he can play center, he can play guard or tackle. Whatever you need him to play, he can play all five.
All right. I'm going to leave Mims on the board for the next team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Corner is the most obvious need. I think a lot of few of myself included, have been mocking the corners. Cooper DeJean is still here. I think it's a pretty good fit. However, this is the Philadelphia Eagles. They love drafting offensive linemen, and Lane Johnson getting up in the years. Mims, bit of a question mark, but might not have to probably would not have to play right away. What would you do if you're the Philadelphia Eagles? Cooper DeJean or Marius Mims?
I would go. Ooh, this is tough. The Eagles are immune to taking corners in the first round for whatever reason.
This is what you would do. You're in charge.
I would go DeJean, just because I don't think Mims will get on the field anytime soon. I don't think Lane is going to call it quits anytime soon. They just signed Mailata to the big deal as well. So Cooper DeJean, I think, is the more natural fit. Darius Slay, James Bradbury, both are getting older and losing a step every year. So, and then with DeJean, he can help you out at corner. He can help you out at safety. There's so many different hats that he can wear in the secondary. So if it were me, I would take DeJean.
So this is an odd one because the Minnesota Vikings are back on the board. And as you remember, Paul rejected several trades. So the Minnesota Vikings do not have a quarterback. They did with pick 11. Well, they have Sam Darnold, but they haven't drafted a quarterback. With pick 11, they took Terry and Arnold. So they did address corner in a big way. There's a few other needs on this roster. Guards, the interior of both the offensive and defensive lines, I think, are pretty notable. And there's some pretty nice players, one of whom I'm going to write down. However, I'm going to give you the option of taking Penix Jr. here. It's pick 23. Just as a reminder, Paul did not take a quarterback. He took a corner. The other player that I'm putting up is Graham Barton, who I think would be a really nice fit for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, positional versatility on the inside. Would you take? It really comes down to whether you think Penix Jr. is worth it, to be honest.
Right. I would look to trade back. 23 is a little rich for me for Penix, but I mean, you have to take the quarterback right here, just because now you're getting down to, with the top 4 guys being gone, it's basically between Penix or Nix at this point, and you need a quarterback. Like Minnesota, they don't have a long-term solution at all. So I think you would have to take Penix in that situation.
Just to be clear, those were the choices that I gave Jordan. He's not saying he would take Penix, and he gave himself several outs, which I respect. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 offensive linemen for the Cowboys, and I want to hear what you think. I'm putting up backup Amarius Mims, who's a tackle, and then leaving Graham Barton up there, who I think would probably play on the inside. So I think this is an interesting choice, and by the way, a very realistic one. For Dallas. It really comes down to how you view their current offensive line, where they should be playing Tyler Smith, that sort of thing. Which of these 2 players would you take?
I would go Barton, just because of the flexibility that he has. We still don't know what Tyler Smith is going to be playing next year, whether it's left guard or left tackle. But when you have Barton, now he's able to play either or of those, just because Barton has played center, he's played some guard, and then he's also played tackle as well. And, Barton, when I was on the pro day circuit, out of the 9 quarterbacks that I saw, he was the most impressive of the bunch. I was blown away with how well he looked at his pro day. He primarily snapped for the most part at his pro day, just because a lot of scouts are projecting him as a center. So with him, you have your natural replacement for Tyler Biadasz, who's now in Washington.
The Green Bay Packers are next, picking at 25. And I think that I'm going to give you 2 choices. So one of these is a position that I think most people think they're more likely to take, and one is kind of a little bit of a curveball. Putting Mims back up, and I'm adding Chop Robinson, who I realize is not really the profile of the typical Packers edge rusher. But again, I'm asking, this is for you, not what you think they would do. I think we know what they would do. Yeah. But what would you rather do?
I would go Mims, just because I think the more pressing need right now, and the better player, in my opinion, is Mims. They have a need at tackle, and they've done a really good job with drafting offensive linemen over the past few years or so. And Mims really falls into that category of the type that they have liked in years past. Super athletic. He has versatility. I think he can play on the right or the left side. So now you're getting a situation of where you can shuffle some guys if you want to. Wherever you want to put Zach Tom, you're able to do that. Elton Jenkins, who's an absolute stud, in my opinion, you can put him at any interior spot. And then with Mims, you can play him on the right or the left side. So I think Mims is a natural fit for them there.
Okay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are next. Picking at 26, and I'm going to leave Chop Robinson on the board. I do think edge, they could go in a lot of different directions right now. I'm looking at their depth chart.
Yeah.
And then I'm adding Nate Wiggins, corner, sneaky need for them. A lot of different opinions on him as a player. I think there's the tape, there's the size.
Mm-hmm.
I like the tape. I don't love the size. If you're Tampa, which of these two players would you take?
I would go Chop. They need some help off of the edge. Shaq Barrett is gone now. They need to find a replacement for him. And Chop is a very similar player, stylistically, very explosive. Just wasn't very productive during this time at Penn State, but more of a pressures over production type of edge rusher. But I think that production is going to come. But the tricky thing about Chop is that I think he needs to be a DPR, designated pass rusher, or a role player very early on. I don't think he's going to be ready to assume a full-time role.
I have an interesting option for you at Arizona.
Oh, here we go. This could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, a lot of different ways. So just as a reminder, Arizona stuck at 4, and they took Malik Neighbors in the draft. So they have the speedy wide receiver. Okay, here are the options. 1 is Nate Wiggins, cornerback. Huge need on this roster, no doubt. But Carolina is on the phone, and they are interested in moving up in the draft to leapfrog Buffalo to get Adonai Mitchell. So if you're Arizona, you'd be moving down, but not that far, to pick 33.
Yeah.
We have been doing pick 33 as a bonus.
Okay.
And in the process, you would pick up, let's say, a third rounder. That might be a little rich, but I'd have to do. I didn't do the trade math before, but let's say a third. Or what did you say? A third would be fair to go. You're going up
fair.
33 to 27.
That's fair.
So, all right, would you do it if you're Arizona, or would you stick and take Nate Wiggins?
I would trade.
Let's do it.
Just because I believe there's some cornerback value based on what's left on the board. I think you can get a starter at 33. There's going to be some guys that are left on the board. So very interesting proposition. And we both know Monty Ossenfort loves to move around in the draft. So I could see this happening.
Okay. I'm going to put Wiggins back up.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw up Keon Coleman, who's the big polarizing, big-bodied wide receiver out of FSU. Which of these two players would you take?
This is a tough one. I'm going to go Keon Coleman. Just because I think he marries very well. I'm going to go Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman's been very underrated throughout the process, and everybody talks about his lack of separation, which can be true to some instance. But whenever you have a guy that does struggle to separate at times like that, what you want is a quarterback that loves to give him chances down the field and isn't scared to throw what I like to call those faith throws in the air, which is something that is all over Keon Coleman's tape of where he's able to turn those 50-50 balls into 80-20 chances.
Okay, I think this is a really difficult decision for Detroit at pick 29. So behind Detroit, you have a lot of teams that could take offensive linemen, right? You got the Ravens, the Niners, the Chiefs. There is a team picking not that long after them that would like to take one of those offensive linemen. He is Jalen Guyton. He is still there. I'm speaking of the Washington Commanders. So on one hand, if you're Detroit, you have the opportunity to trade back not very far. You're going from 29 to the second pick, right? In the second round. And you can pick up, let's say, I don't know, a third might be, let's say the third along the way, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But you really need a corner. Nate Wiggins is still there. What would you do?
Oof, this is a really tough one. I would make the trade. I think
You're making the trade?
Yeah, I think the trade is
or
really
Nate Wiggins. He is falling.
Yeah, I think the trade is really enticing. I'm a big trade back guy. I always love stacking draft capital. So I would take the trade there.
How do you like Guyton for the Commanders?
I like it. He would have to flip sides. He's predominantly played right tackle for the most part, with Charles Leno being gone now and Wiley being at that right tackle spot. He would have to flip over to the other side. But I think he has the athleticism to do it. He is very inconsistent right now, but he's one of those players that as he continues to get more reps, you're hoping that things can eventually click for him.
Okay, so the Baltimore Ravens We're eyeing Guyton. So they're looking at the next offensive lineman on their board, and that's Jordan Morgan, super athletic tackle out of Arizona. But Nate Wiggins is still there, and they need corners. So I'm leaving him on the board. What would you do?
This is another tough one just because Baltimore has a huge need at offensive line. Wiggins just isn't a Baltimore Ravens type of corner to me. And I'm actually going to go with Jordan Morgan here. I just think the offensive lineman is more pressing for them. Morgan Moses is gone now. They need an offensive tackle there. Jordan Morgan has versatility. He can play inside. he can play tackle. And I think they would go with Morgan right there. Wiggins just doesn't strike me as a Baltimore Ravens type of corner.
This is funny because when I was doing this poll, I was like, oh, wow, we might not draft as many offensive linemen as I've been taking, but now they're all starting to fall off at the end. I think that could happen in the real draft as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me give you kind of a little bit of a curveball for the San Francisco 49ers. I think offensive line is the most obvious need for San Francisco, but I do not. Well, actually, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to put up I have not put him up in a bit. I'm going to put up JPJ.
Okay.
As an option for them. I mean, the Niners could take, I think, offensive line at any of the positions, to be honest. And then I'm leaving Wiggins because cornerback is also a need for this team. Yeah. I'm going to keep putting up Wiggins until someone takes him.
I think Wiggins will come off the board right here. Okay. This is your spot for Wiggins. They have a need at corner. All of their outside corners are free agents after the 2025 season. And they need a nickel as well. But Wiggins, is more so of an outside guy. So he could eventually, if they don't want to re-sign one of those guys, he'll be able to take over.
So the Chiefs, I think in the last draft, picking at 32 now, I think I had them going corner in the last draft. I don't remember which corner. I don't know if it was McKinstry or Wiggins. They tend to be the ones who are available there. But I do... we don't want to going on with Rashee Rice. I am going to give you a couple of wide receivers instead because I just want to hear what you think of them. And this is Rich for it's a receiver that one of them, I think both of them are probably not really like borderline, more likely second rounders, but I'm giving you an option between two very different receivers just because I kind of want to hear who you think would be a better fit. Troy Franklin, the speedster out of Oregon, or Jalen Polk, the ball winner out of UW. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, which of these players would you rather have?
I honestly would rather have Polk, just because I think you already have a similar player stylistically with Hollywood Brown that you would get in Franklin. But with Polk, he's a player that can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. And even though his traits are really average from like an explosiveness standpoint, he brings you so much as far as a ball winner and a ball catcher. Like his range and his radius as a pass catcher is so good. That's something that you notice a ton on film with him. And he just understands how to win on routes. So speed was always the big worry with him. But in the game, he just has an understanding of how to get open. And then his catch radius is so good, he very rarely drops passes. So I think he would have really good chemistry with Mahomes.
I'm going to give you a bonus pick. The Arizona Cardinals, who you might remember, traded down. So the Cardinals, actually, you know what? Let's do this.
I was going to say Panther fans are going to be upset with you.
We gave them we gave them Matt and I Mitchell.
Oh,
so
right.
remember?
Yeah,
so they should be thrilled. Yeah.
That's right.
So the Cardinals already have Malik Neighbors in our draft. So I'm not going wide receiver. You could really go every position. And I'm kind of just going, this is so funny. I wrote McKinstry. I think I combined McKinstry and Rakestraw. I'm doing McKinstry corner, very much in need. But I'm leaving JPJ on the board. Jackson Powers Johnson, interior offensive line, also in need for this team. Which of those two players would you take at 33 for the Arizona Cardinals?
This is a really tough one. This is one of the tougher ones, honestly, just because the Cardinals need A center, and then they also need a corner as well.
They need
But
everything.
they do. I'm actually going to go with Kool-Aid right there. I think
All
Kool-Aid's
right.
been really, really underrated throughout the process. And I think it's because the expectations were so high for him coming out this year. He was labeled as CB1. Um, but what happened was Tyrion Arnold really came out of nowhere, and it kind of has overshadowed McKinstry's draft status. And he's been great throughout the process. I thought his pro day was really good. He tested much better than what a lot of people were expecting, but he just doesn't have the athleticism and the allure that Tyrion Arnold does. But I just love the veteran like mentality and the polished technique that he has. So the Cardinals really lack a true CB1. I know they signed Sean Murphy Bunting this offseason. He's more of a CB2, CB3 type. But having that front end top tier guy, which I think McKinstry can be, walking through the door, I will go with McKinstry right there.
I like it. I would do that too. I like your picks. Very sensible, very smart. If you get mad in the comments at Paul, our beloved Paul, please don't get mad at Jordan. No, you guys should follow Jordan on Twitter, Jordan_Reid. Check him out. Again, he's all over ESPN right now covering the draft for us. This has been super fun. Thank you so much, Jordan. And I will see the rest of you guys from Detroit.